Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, where we are covering the 2016 Reagan National Defense Forum. Our coverage here has been sponsored by Raytheon, and we're talking to the second to last Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, Frank Kendall. Frank, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Vago. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I said that during the panel discussion that you were the last one, but you're the penultimate one. But I'll get perhaps. We'll see.
Recruit anybody for this current job still.
Let me start. I mean, the transition. There was a transition meeting at the highest levels. The Trump team came over to the Pentagon, met with the Pentagon leadership. You were in that meeting. Obviously, surprising outcome to the election. But still, what were some of the things that was discussed, insofar as you're willing to discuss them, where there's some commonality, things that were reassuring that were said, but also what are things that are going to be divergent that indicate, the change in course that the new team is interested in executing?
I've been in one meeting with members of the transition team for defense, and this is the team that's in the Pentagon collecting information in preparation for the change in administrations. We spent a few hours together. It was a very cordial, professional meeting. It was basically fact-finding, information gathering on their part. We were very candid with them about any range of number of topics, and we gave them information on a number of the issues that the new administration will have to face.
What were some of the messages you guys were delivering about the challenges that lay ahead?
That the new administration fundamentally will have a great deal to do in a very short period of time. They will have to reconsider the budget, which we're completing, and submit it within the next few months. They will have to respond to the National Defense Authorization Bill, which appears to be on a course to be passed, which requires a number of things to be done by the administration, some of them fairly quickly, others over the course of the first year. That's a heavy workload. If all those things were all they had to worry about, it'd be one thing, but they also have wars to fight. They also had to bring in and recruit a new team of people for the political positions that are going to be vacated. So it's a very, very big challenge for the new team.
Was there any discussion on who might stay? I mean, for example, would you consider staying on in order to be able to, granted that you've been on the job now for 8 straight years, but 7, but it's going to, but who's counting? But as you guys look at it, did they ask and did anybody offer, and or would you consider staying in order to tide this period over?
They have not asked, and I'm not expecting to stay. I think when you have a change in parties like this with what may be a significant change in perspective, that you would expect a fairly complete change out. And that's basically the trajectory that we're on. As far as I know, no one has said anything to anyone about staying. Certainly no one has said anything to me. I had not, frankly, seriously considered that possibility. And I suppose if I was asked, I would have to think about it. I am concerned about this transition period that we're going to go into and the lack of experienced leadership in the department, simply because of the confirmation process. There's a great group of career people, senior SESs and military people that will provide continuity. But there are some decisions that need to be made by people who are affiliated with the new administration so that they'll be lasting. And I think that's going to be very difficult to accomplish in the time that's necessary.
What are some of the priorities that you're recommending to the incoming team that, hey, as you guys build your plan, consider these 5 things as being the most important things to put on your to-do list? Well,
at the top of my list would be some of the things I talked about in our panel earlier. Work with the Congress to get rid of sequestration. That would be number one. Better align our budget so that our force structure is fully funded, not just today, but for tomorrow and after that. I'm concerned about the long-term health of the department and the balance between things like the size of the force and the ability to sustain it, readiness, and the amount of money we're putting into recapitalization, replacing old equipment, and the amount of money we're putting into modernization, research and development. I think some of our longer-term things, frankly, are underfunded today. We don't have much choice but to keep the force structure that we need to meet our commitments, and then to do everything we can to make it ready. And because of the way our budget process has played out under the threat of sequestration for the last few years, we have generally come back with much lower levels than we requested. And that's not been a healthy situation, so that needs to be addressed.
Are there any specific programs that once sequestration is lifted, as you would stack them to tell the team, hey, look, it's Ohio replacement program, for example, Joint Strike, whatever it is?
The number one priority for the department, just from a mission perspective, is a strategic deterrent. So those programs must be financed. They must be funded. And they're already very tight on their schedules. So we can't defer them. We can't save money that way. And there is risk. There's risk in all the modernization programs for the Triad. I would put that very high on the list. And then I would look at our more cutting-edge, newest systems, F-35, for example, and make sure we were modernizing those at a reasonable rate. Then I would look at some of the things that are a little further downstream that we may have started demonstrations on in early risk reduction or prototyping, and look at ways to fund those, make some choices about those, and decide which ones in the 5-year plan at least to put funding in to actually carry them out of that phase and into development for production and production itself.
You mentioned the Ohio replacement program. OMB does not like the department to forward anomalies over to Congress. You guys had that on the list. ORP was one of the first ones, obviously, because under the continuing resolution, you guys can't start the program, and the Ohio-class boats aren't getting any younger with each passing day. I mean, we're starting a process that's not going to put a ship in the water for many, many years yet. What is the impact of that, of saying no? I mean, how seriously does it potentially delay the program?
Well, we're obviously talking about a few months if we talk about a few months delay in increasing funding levels or making fundamental decisions. So some of these things are a day-for-day slip. We need in certain cases
But that does cost money, right, for the contractors and the teams that are standing around?
Absolutely. And on the production side, being forced to buy at lower rates than we had planned in the budget means the cost would go up. A good example of that is a tanker, of course. And there's a few $100 million, I think, at stake there alone.
I want to take you to one of the stipulations in the NDAA. Obviously, it looks like it's on its way. It's on its way to passage.
You're over 5 minutes.
It's always good when your guest is reminding you that you're over 5 minutes. This is my last question.
You got it.
I could not ask you this question. And full disclosure, I've editorialized that your job should stay whole and free. But the committees decided that they were going to break the job of the Undersecretary of Technology for Acquisition, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics into two undersecretaries. One the technology one for acquisition and sustainment. What do you think the implications of that are? You did make the case on why that was not a good idea. That job, your job was created obviously by Goldwater Nichols. What do you see as both the opportunities but also the challenges of this new structure?
The important thing in all of this to me is to keep the various phases of the life cycle of our products together under one management lead. Those are the T, the A, and the L pieces, if you will, of the current organization. You could separate out the research piece, the earlier technology piece. You could pull out some experimental prototyping. But for the programs that we intend to pursue and have made a decision to do that, you need that whole life cycle under one management. Early decisions drive the costs. Early decisions drive the risk. So you need that under a person who will be responsible for the full life cycle. The law is written, as I understand it, the NDAA, does give us enough flexibility to restructure consistent with that. But that's not the only choice. And I appreciate any flexibility that Congress gives us. I think we ended up in a much better position in the NDAA than we might have. And I think that an early and important task for the new administration is to sort that out. It's going to be difficult for anybody to come into my position and then disestablish part of or dissolve or separate the position he just took. That's not a good position to have, and it leads to long-term turf wars in the Pentagon. That's very unhealthy, and it's distracting. I think, frankly, the new administration needs to make some decisions very quickly about how they want to implement the law and make it clear to anybody coming in what their job will be, and let people in the building know who they're going to be working for so they can get on with their work and not be distracted.
We had a panel discussion where the debate was reform or rebuild, right, to just buy more things. And you were on the rebuild side, although everybody on the panel acknowledged the absolute need to both reform and to rebuild. Yes. And there is a perception among many that this administration was interested in reform very much because of the Budget Control Act, in part because the president himself was a technology and a reform-minded or reform geek or tech geek, as folks he himself has called himself that. And yet on the Trump side, it seems much more to be we just need to build more stuff and we just need to get on with it. did you get a sense from that meeting that you had with the Trump team, but also just in general, whether it's so many of the reform proposals, the Defense Innovation Initiative and all these other things, would be carried forward in some form by the new administration?
First of all, it was pretty much a one-way exchange. We were giving them information. And I wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk or speculate about what they're going to do. They'll have the opportunity to do that when they have a slate of nominees ready. I think everybody on your panel did this morning, that we can do both. We can reform and rebuild. And a lot of this is about the definitions. But my experience has been that the professionals in the department are constantly, all of them, looking for ways to improve the way we do business. And if that's what reform is, then we're going to continue to do it. There are some other things that are a little bit larger, more dramatic. The NDAA that I mentioned, compels us to do a number of things. So those will be taken on. The getting the substance of what we do right, getting the budget right, is, I think, the first order of business.
Sir, thanks very much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, Vaughn. Always a pleasure.